these things around 2015, and when I started researching, it turned out they started coming out in 2010s, early 2010s. And that's interesting because not a lot of genres are being born around our times, and this one came out just because of the internet and just how communities form on the internet and how they function. Uh, both of you have, I mean, both of you are as young as I am, maybe a couple of years older to me. So, how was your interaction with these genres? How did you start getting into them?
Barun, do you want to go first?
Sure, I'll go first. Like I have mentioned before, I think the previous times we tried to do this, that I was introduced to it early on, but I didn't know that it had a name, like synthwave, vaporwave. I didn't know these names existed and these terms, classifications existed in the world. I would hear it, in retro games, in arcade games. You would hear it in movies trying to create, futuristic soundscapes. Even what's his name, Hans Zimmer uses it, like Blade Runner. You know, that's a classical example of him trying to use. He's using it in his way, of course, but I never knew until Tanmay came and he told me that, hey, we're going to be talking about synthwave, vaporwave. I was just like, what is this? And then I was like, oh wait, I've heard all this. And vaporwave now, as we know it, it's called that lo-fi hip hop, jazz hop, whatever. But I guess it's vaporwave. But yeah, so I've been hearing it throughout. Didn't really register what it was.
Yeah, I think I mean for me it would be similar. So I'm sorry, I'm just gonna have to clarify when you mentioned Blade Runner and Hans Zimmer, you're talking about the new one, no?
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, because I haven't watched that, but the OG Blade Runner was sick. Anyway, for me, like I feel like when you're listening to a lot of house music, like these concepts already existed the same way Barun said that they did for him, but they didn't really have a name at that time. So like having heavily reverbed gated snares was already something that I was exposed to with house music or like 80s music in general. Having like really like chuggy, pulsing bass lines that are going on eighth notes with like a tonic and then the same thing an octave up. Like all of these concepts already existed, but like it was hard to put a name on them. And then suddenly, like it just ended up being called synthwave after like a few people took that whole 80s aesthetic, and I mean that in like an audio visual combined sense, and put it together. And then you were like, oh, so this is synthwave, because if you take the individual principles then it's not synthwave, but if you put it all together, like if you take really like synthetic pads and like strings, and you take the sounds of like old school drums and like put a shit ton of reverb on there, that's synthwave. Vaporwave was new to me. Tanmay introduced me to it because I mean I knew what it is, but at the same time when Tanmay was like, "We're gonna talk about vaporwave," I was like, "Yeah, sure," but inside I was like, "I don't know what he's talking about." So I had to actually go back and like piece it together, but it sort of made sense after that. And yeah, like a plus one to what Barun said, like a lo-fi vaporwave thing is like it goes in parallel. There's such subtle differences that for anyone who is not actively engaged in the music scene, like they won't give a shit. They won't care about it at all. They're like, it's the same to me. But like for us, now that we're having this super nerdy conversation, I think it's important to note the differences. So like I've been doing my research. That's kind of how I came about all of these things.